Oh, all right, here we go. All right, good morning, everybody. I'm Mr. Dowdy. This is 5th grade life science. We're going to be looking at some real cool things, lots of different plants and animals. Going to be mainly seeing how the different types of plants and the different types of animals in their kingdom, in their domains, how they're alike in different ways, but they're also uniquely different in different ways. And we'll get into some of those examples as we move along into our move along into our class here. To get started, I'll give you guys a brief explanation of what we're going to be kind of looking for in the class in our rational here, right here in the lesson plan. All right, in this class we will look at how all living organisms, including plants and humans, have things in common, but every living organism is also very unique from one another. Like I said, a lot of our stuff is the same, but we're also very different. Students will also, will learn in this class that all living organisms on Earth have unique structures, internal and external, that help them adapt to their environment for what they need. Now, that is, things like plants have, the stems that help keep them strong, and that stem can point the flower in a certain direction of sunlight if it needs more sunlight. We have some very cool things that go on. And also, students in this class will learn that life science as a subject can be better studied and understood by observing the natural world all around us. So basically what that means is the best way to study science is to get out there in the world and really see what's going on. That's the best thing that we can do. All right. As I'll get into our standard here, right here on our lesson plan to get us started and kind of give us an idea of what we're going to be doing. All right, compare and contrast the function of organs and other physical structures of plants and animals, including humans. For example, some animals have skeletons for support, some with internal skeletons, and others with exoskeletons. While some plants have stems for support, like I mentioned earlier, which the stem can do a lot of different stuff for the plant. All right, now that we see kind of what we're up against here, let's look into our student learning outcomes and see where we would like to hope to be as we get towards the end of this class and have you guys moving on. All right, given a set of plants or animals, the student, y'all, will compare and contrast organisms in the set by function of the organ or their physical structures. We will need to score, I'm asking if we could score at least 80 points on our performance rubric that we'll look into as we get into a little bit later on into our class here. And I'll read over the rubric, and we'll also take, right before that, we'll take a look at our assessment that you guys are going to be scored on here that I'm talking about in the student learning outcomes. All right. Now this assessment, this is a very important thing, and luckily it's performance-based, so we're going to be working on it in the classroom a lot. We're going to be using the media center, and we're going to be taking lots of notes together as a class with some great websites that we have to use. All right, now with that being said, let's go over some, basically like a quick overview of what our assessment's going to be. For the performance-based summative assessment assigned in this class, students will construct a project where they compare and contrast vascular and non-vascular plants, and also for animals. Students are to compare and contrast reptiles from mammals, which similarities there, but remember we're going to compare and contrast, so we got to show how they're the same, and then we got to contrast them and show what makes them uniquely different. Okay, for this project, y'all are going to need a minimum of 8 slides in a PowerPoint, which will then be orally presented to y'all. The rest of the class, y'all will present to your fellow classmates. Students will need to identify on their presentation how each of these types of plants are structured differently and the functions of their organs. For this project, again, remember, we're going to use I want y'all to use 2 sources of our 4 pre-approved websites, and we'll get into what those websites are here momentarily. And remember, if you just do everything that is here in the instructions, you should be able to easily get an 80% on your rubric. All right, let's go over our instructions here for the test. You will need to complete a PowerPoint of a minimum of 8 slides or a standard size poster board. I didn't mention this earlier, guys, but we can, if you don't have if you just don't want to do the computer option and you would rather do your research and then write it out and put it on a poster board, that's completely fine. We can do that. All right. Once you get that done, you'll give an oral presentation along with your project. This presentation should be about 5 to 10 minutes long, so you can cover your slides or your poster board, and we have time to get the other students up there as well, and they can show their work and research. All right, so research information. Now this is this is like a little bit of our time frame here. We're going to take 3 weeks where the class each day is going to head into the media center, where we can conduct our research together for about 45 minutes to the last hour of our class each day. So for 3 weeks, we're going to be going to the media center for 45 minutes to an hour at the end of the day, and we're going to be taking on this research, getting our stuff put together so we can do this project. All right. For our research, a handout for your note-taking will be given out each day that we go into the media center, and you'll be putting your information right into there. Students will fill these boxes. Our handout will have boxes on it. Students will fill these boxes with information that separates the plants and the animals and shows how they are different, such as the structures and the functions of their organs. Like we talked about earlier, we want to be talking about their functions. What makes them different. Our mammals, see, you have mammals and you have reptiles. See, like that's for the animals. Like number one thing that I can think of right off the head is, remember, reptiles are warm-blooded, mammals are cold-blooded. So that's a huge, unique difference right there with the animals. All right. Now here, when we're going to get into our research sources, we have 4. I picked 4. They're all 4 good websites. We're only going to need 2. All right. For our research sources, we're going to be using Kids National Geographic, biointeractive.org, microbenotes.com, and finally, generationgenius.com. And now I'll remind you guys too a little bit is sometimes when you're doing research, a lot of teachers, they'll tell you, oh, you want to stay away from your .coms and stuff like that. And that is exactly right. It's better, if you're looking at your URLs, which is your .coms, .nets, .org, .gov. When you're doing like research for school, and stuff where we need scholarly sources is what they're called, you want to be using things like a .org, a .gov, or, and better, or you can even get into like get into peer-reviewed articles and things like that as you get out of 5th grade and move ahead on with your studies. So anyways, let's move on here. And I'm going to go over our scoring rubric here for our science assessment. All right. We want to have a knowledge of non-vascular plants, as mentioned earlier. We want to have a knowledge of vascular plants, as mentioned earlier. We want to have a knowledge of mammals. And then finally, a knowledge of reptiles. Because remember, we're classifying also the animals and the plants. All right. For an excellent 25 points on the scoring rubric, for our grading, we have excellent, satisfactory, and poor. Excellent being 25 points, satisfactory being 20, and poor only being 15 points. We hope we can stay away from the poor. Follow the instructions, and you should have no issues getting excellence all the way down and scoring 100 on this rubric and everything being awesome. All right, for the excellent points, for excellent, 25 points for knowledge of non-vascular plants. Students will have at least 2 slides explaining vascular plants and how they differ from non-vascular plants. So right there, you're going to be contrasting, and make sure we have at least 2 slides explaining how non-vascular plants are unique. All right, and for a satisfactory, students only have 1 fully complete slide explaining non-vascular plants and how they're unique. For poor, which is only 15 points, you have 1 slide that is very sloppily, poorly done, or no slide at all. All right, moving on to knowledge of vascular plants. For an excellent, again, students will have to have at least 2 slides completely filled out explaining vascular plants and how they're uniquely different from non-vascular plants. And again, for satisfactory, which is 20 points, it is only 1 fully completed slide explaining the differences and likenesses that make them unique for vascular plants, or how they contrast from non-vascular plants. And again, poor is 1 slide that's very sloppily done, not complete, or no slide at all. Moving on to mammals. Students will have, again, at least 2 full slides, guys. This is 8. So you want 2, 2, 2, and 2. So 8 full slides. If you do 2 for everything, you should have no problem getting an A on this. Students will have at least 2 slides explaining how things such as the function of the organs make mammals different from reptiles. So, again, you want to look into things that, what makes them different? How is the mammal unique, for the animals? You want to be able to compare them also and say, well, is there anything there that's alike? All right. Again, for satisfactory, only 1 full slide complete with information on how the organs are uniquely different, on how their structures are uniquely different, and or compare about how their structure or organs are the same almost. And again, poor is only 1 slide, sloppily filled out, or nothing at all. And finally, knowledge of reptiles. Again, you as a student, you'll need at least 2 slides completely explaining about how reptiles are unique in their own distinct way and how their functions of their organs or their structures can be different, or, like I said, the same just a little bit as mammals, because remember, we need to compare and contrast. And again, satisfactory, it's only 1 complete slide of that information, and poor is 1 slide that's sloppily done, not filled out all the way, or no slide at all, which we don't want, which we're not going to have, because we're going to work through this together as a class and get it done in our media center. All right, with that being said, the only thing that you guys are going to need really are our pencils, our note-taking forms, which are going to be provided. And if you care to not do the PowerPoint slide, you will need a presentation poster board. And of course, our school library will be providing computers, so we'll be using the media center to do our research there. Which, this is the handout example. And that's what you guys students are going to be filling out as we work through this research together. All right. And as we get through this class, one thing that I really want us to focus on is critical thinking. We need to be able to think critically, and we need to be able to not just everything in life isn't just a yes or no answer. Sometimes you really got to think about things. So I want to get going with some critical thinking questions here, and this will give us something to think about as we progress through our class and move on and get ready for our performance-based assessment and all that. And this will really help you with the comparing and the contrasting. All right, for our first critical thinking question is, if mammals are endothermic, meaning they regulate their temperature inside their bodies, then how do reptiles regulate their temperature to stay warm? So basically we're asking is, okay, so we know mammals are endothermic, which means they heat up on the inside. They can warm their bodies from the inside out. Now we got to look in to see, well, how does a reptile stay warm? All right. 2. What is the purpose of the mammary gland on a mammal, and do reptiles have this sort of gland also? So, you want to look into what is the mammary gland, all right? And then why do mammals have that mammary gland? And is this something that they share with reptiles also, or is this something that they contrast on, which makes them uniquely different? And for our final thinking question here, our critical thinking question, we can look into, I want you to think about plants, animals, and their cells. We're going to talk a little bit about cells as we go through this class. So, here's a basic question. And it's not, I know it doesn't sound so much as a critical thinking question, but you are going to have to think about it because you're not going to know. So, what does a plant cell have that an animal cell doesn't have? So this is a contrasting question. How are animal cells different from plant cells? Think about it. And all right, guys, we'll go close on up for the day. Today's, we primarily focused on the differences in reptiles and mammals in the animal kingdom. And we focused some, too, on our non-vascular and our vascular plants and how they differ, and a little bit how they're alike also. And we're going to take our research that we gained up working as groups in this class, and then some of this research, especially that we just talked about in the critical thinking questions, we're going to use that research in this performance-based rubric and on our performance-based assessment. And remember, guys, we want to shoot for that 80 on the scoring rubric, but follow the instructions, stay thorough with your research in our media center sessions, and guys, this shouldn't be no problem to ace this performance-based assessment. And sounds good. Thank you.